This is now. We've now got pictures back from the circuit ahead of the second session of practice for the Nürburgring race. I just had to say that the fishing expert was just jostling himself into his orthopaedic chair there. But first up, let's hear from Ben.
Thanks very much, Matt. John's here with me. We're all set to go for this second session of free practice here this morning. It's been a little bit quiet so far this morning. The Ferrari's dominating proceedings, but I think we should see some more fireworks as we get into this second 1 hour of free practice and see whether Bridgestone and Ferrari can maintain that advantage.
And Ben, I think the big change, or not the big change, a change is going to be the track has now got a certain amount of rubber down. Weather's been fine, there's not been any further rain, and the teams will start to do a little bit more of the serious work. Of course, some of the teams this morning would have run with a large fuel load on. Williams particularly do that. McLaren tend to do it, but maybe they're splitting the workload between Raikkonen and Coulthard. But for the second part of the session, particularly towards the end, once the teams decide which of the two tyre choices they have is the optimum one, then they will put a new set on, and we might start to see lap times approaching what we might think would be nearer to a pole time, bearing in mind that the lap pole from last year was 1:14.9. I've been guessing at about 8 to 10 seconds should be the additional time for the revision to the circuit. Hard to tell whether that's going to be close or just way out, but right now 1:33, middle 1:33s is a long way away.
Yes, but with this revised track, we're going to have to get an idea of just what the new times will be. There's Jarno Trulli, the Italian. Has plenty of experience of racing here. He is a former winner of the German Formula 3 Championship, in fact. So did plenty of racing at the Nürburgring in his time in Formula 3 before getting the opportunity to move up to Grand Prix racing. And just looking back over the run of success here at the Nürburgring ever since this new track was created in 1984. We've seen 3 wins for Ferrari in that time, coming the second time that the Grand Prix cars visited the new track, 1985 for Michele Alboreto, and then 2 wins in the last 2 years for Michael Schumacher. So 3 wins for Ferrari in that time, and 2 wins apiece for McLaren and Williams as well. So it's a fairly even battle at the moment between the top manufacturers, but in this morning's session we've seen Ferrari certainly having the edge in the free practice. Peter, I think seeing Ferrari on top once again, do we just put that down to the Bridgestone tyres for the moment?
Well, Ben, I think it's not the fact that they're on top, it's that they're on top by such a margin. That's quite unusual. And looking at the times and talking to some of the guys in the pit lane, it's pretty clear that unusually for Ferrari, they actually ran very light fuel loads in the first third of that session this morning. We don't normally see Ferrari doing that, and one has to wonder why. It could be because they figured the track was going to be so green that they weren't going to learn too much by doing endurance runs, because the sort of knowledge they would get would not apply to the circuit tomorrow. Could be that. It could be just, you know, this is our home track for Michael, let's get out and just do a mega quick time and psych everybody out. But certainly Ferrari slower later in the session, which would indicate that they then put fuel in. And if we look at those lap times next to Williams BMW, the gap isn't quite as big. For all that, Williams BMW did have some software glitches in the first third of their session as well, so didn't really have a great time either. So slightly magnified time there, but interesting to see Michael opting for that light fuel strategy from the start of the weekend.
Peter, with the layout of this track, particularly with that new section, do you see McLaren and Renault being a big factor with Williams once again this weekend? Particularly Renault, I'm thinking of, because Canada didn't really suit them, but maybe this place will.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Ben. I think this could be quite good for Renault. I think actually behind, around Renault and just a little bit behind them, the racing could be very good. If you take Jordan and Sauber into that as well, it could be some very close racing we'll see there. McLaren a question mark, I think, at the moment. As we've just heard DC say, he's still got that sort of oversteer into the corner thing, which he doesn't like, which Kimi Raikkonen can drive around. But DC did a great job getting rid of that from the car in Canada. In the last 20 laps of Canada, as we saw, he was very quick. So they're a little bit of an unknown quantity at the moment, McLaren.
Ireland. Thanks very much, Peter. We'll talk to you again a little bit later on. And it's good to see the sun just beginning to break through that cloud cover here at the Nürburgring. Always unpredictable weather conditions in this part of the world, up in the Eifel Mountains. But for the moment, the track is dry and cleaning up nicely. Bit of rubber going down. We should see those times improving, as you were saying, John.
Yes, and I mean, just what Ferrari were doing, whether they ran low, medium, high fuel loads at what different points in the session. Part of the reason that they may have chosen to do something like a lower than normal fuel load run early in the session is because the track conditions are such that they're very green, and if they maybe went out with a higher fuel load, maybe that would have had a bearing on the way the tyre performed. So, you know, where teams win Grand Prix isn't just because of one single factor, it's because they're on the case all the time. Now there's a great view, just gone away from it, of that revision to the circuit. You could actually see the little dips and undulations, but it is very, very tight coming down, and you are pointing slightly downhill. Again, not unlike going into turn one in the Hungaroring. You come along pit straight, the track drops away, and by the time you see the corner, you need to be on the brakes and being prepared to turn in. And it will be interesting come the Grand Prix on Sunday afternoon to see how people deal with this, and it will offer up a realistic overtaking opportunity. But we've seen so many drivers this morning make judgments, errors of judgment, under braking, going in, and hopefully by the time we get to Sunday afternoon they'll have cancelled all those errors out. But nevertheless, in a racing situation, you sometimes have to take a risk to get past another car.
That's right, John. And the old first corner, of course, saw its own share of incidents, didn't it? There was usually something going on there, and there was that big accident back in 1999 where Pedro Diniz ended up upside down through into the gravel there. That's, I suppose, part of what they're trying to do is to get away from that, but we could have other problems instead with this very tight hairpin. We'll have to find out on Sunday. Now, while we're looking inside the Ferrari pit at the moment, they've been going well this morning. We know that Honda have got their new engine here for BAR and for Jordan. Jacques Villeneuve has had some up and down performances so far this year, and of course the man who manages his career looking towards next year is Craig Pollock. Nick Damon has caught up with him.
Craig Pollock, you've just said to me, why talk to me, I'm retired, but the question is, are you really? I mean, you're in the background here, are you looking to get back into high levels of team management?
Well, I am retired at the moment, there's no question about it, otherwise I'd be dressed up in team uniform. At the moment I'm just an investor in a Formula One team, very happy to be so. And of course I will keep my eyes open inside the Formula One business, see if there's any other business to do.
But do you want to come back?
What do I want? That's for me to know and you to worry about.
You are, of course, the one job you definitely do have is Jacques Villeneuve's manager. Is it true the team's asked to take him a pay cut for the good of the team?
No, there's been no talk about that, especially to me, but I believe there have been some comments made to the press. If that was the case, then the team shouldn't have signed the contract in the first place. It was them that wanted Jacques.
And it's cast iron for next year?
As far as I'm concerned, the contract is a contract that's been signed. For me, it's a very, very strong contract, and I will respect the contract, as will Jacques, and I expect the team to do the same thing.
Craig, thank you.
Well, Craig Pollock being very firm there in his comments, but of course bear in mind he was the boss of the team until the end of last year, so he was the one signing Jacques Villeneuve and representing him at the same time. A tricky situation.
Yes, and I think that Craig was very emphatic in what the team did, but he was the team principal, and he may not technically have done the contract, but I mean, he is Villeneuve's manager. It's a bit like gamekeeper and poacher. And I mean, Jacques is very highly paid, he has got a contract, and Pollock is saying is that the contract is there to be honoured. But it wasn't the contract that was signed by the new team principal, that's Dave Richards, who's come in. It was signed by the previous one, Craig Pollock, and Craig remains an investor. He has a shareholding in BAR, and he is Jacques Villeneuve's manager. What can you say?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Well, between them, Jacques Villeneuve and Michael Schumacher are the two highest paid Grand Prix drivers currently racing. Jacques on about £15 million at the moment, just over $20 million by most reckoning. Michael Schumacher on some $32 million. Some amazing amount of money it might seem, but then of course Michael Schumacher is the best in the world, and that is his market rate, and it really takes a lot for anyone to beat him. Kimi Räikkönen coming out onto the track then, with cars coming onto the circuit for this second session of free practice. He's actually going to do a little launch control start just down at the end there, and there is the BAR Honda also heading out of the pit lane. Jacques Villeneuve and Olivier Panis, neither of them really shining this morning, with Villeneuve 17th fastest and 11th place for Panis, who's just coming out of the pits.
So let's have a look in at another local boy, Nick Heidfeld, also from Mönchengladbach. It's even closer than I actually believed it to be. So Brenson and Heidfeld, along with the Schumachers, very much the local heroes and no doubt their fan clubs will be out in force here this weekend. And some
first flying lap, but I think hopefully he should be able to get back onto track again.
I think it was literally he'd just gone through one sector and he was making his way down. Let's look and see. This is the view up from the Dunlop curve. He just gets a massive lock-up and decides that the prudent thing is to get through the gravel as quickly as possible, get onto the grass or the little access route that there should be directly behind. And this is coming out of the forward curve, the second part of those two forward curves. Let's watch as Mark Webber makes his way down to the Dunlop curve.
Yeah, let's see what happened here, because it seemed to come from the rear. He locked the left front.
He locked the front spin, and that was simply just maybe an imbalance in the brake temperatures between front and rear.
It was a bit strange, and also the right rear suspension, when he was going through the gravel track, just the right rear suspension looked a little odd to me. I don't know whether he had some sort of a problem there.
You think he might have had well, he has. He's got it's a rear suspension failure, probably a push rod. So Mark Webber, yeah, but it's difficult looking at it, just getting a quick glimpse. You could see the car down on the right, up on the left, and that was why the left front locked up more than the right front. When the car was tilted to the right, it would be unusual to see a left front lock up. Now, either that's a puncture, we suspect that it may be a suspension problem, because I don't see the tyre looking particularly deflated there in that view.
So Ralf Schumacher, he has no such problems. He's coming out and accelerating. At the moment, of course, Ralf Schumacher finds himself down in 14th position after this morning's 1 hour period, 304.7 kilometers per hour at the speed trap, just a fraction off the fastest set by the Ferrari of his brother, but he's matched that earlier on with 306 himself.
And he's going to go certainly a little bit better than his current one, 36.4. He's got personal best in first and second, and he goes, well, marginally better, up to 13th place.
Now let's just watch him into that new section. We'll quickly have a look at Kimi Räikkönen as well, coming around the last corner. Important to get good traction out of this corner. That's down to chassis balance as well as traction control. You really want the car to provide you with good traction, so that the traction control hasn't really got much work to do there out of that final corner, and launch yourself down the start-finish straight and then into this new twiddly section that the drivers have been talking about. One of the Williams in the background there went in a little bit too deep, and into the pits comes Mark Webber.
So the bit curves, so a little bit of action, boys, trying to go a bit too quickly too soon, and errors creeping in.
Well, he's found an access road to make his way back onto the track once again.
Yes, and in fact, you see it, that was a revised. It was initially we saw it up on those two corners. It was out of the forward curve, so into the first part of the forward curve, very much like Benoldi, very similar to Enrique Benoldi.
Oh, he nearly got it back.
He did a good job. He kept the car on the track, but this time just too close to the edge, and to try and maybe pull it back on, he might have in fact spun the car.
So he manages to rejoin, which is good news for him, as we're looking at David Coulthard getting a little out of shape, currently 7th fastest.
And again, late on the brakes, that caused the back end of the car, which Coulthard always complains about. It was starting to go wayward and made a rather untidy entry into the chicane, and of course consequently loses time off the exit.
Good improvement in time though. He goes up to 3rd, and Räikkönen right behind him on track and right behind him in terms of the times, just 2/10 slower. The two McLaren Mercedes putting in some quick laps now.
Well, just watch, there's the back of the car. You could see it just beginning to slide, and then it sort of goes one way, and that chicane, it is such a messy sequence of corners, and if you clip it going in it, you've got to be so aggressive and so inconsiderate to the chassis. As we go back to Felipe Massi, doing a good job through turn 1, gets it neatly in, and And it's a frustrating corner because you aim in, and the inside of the car, very, very unloaded, and it's just almost as if air gets under the front of the car and lets it float out to the exit of the corner.
Yes, Felipe Massa just getting in some laps, and useful laps here at the moment. Only just under half a second down on the pace that was set earlier on by Rubens Barrichello. Barrichello is out on the track once again now, so we've got a good number of cars out there. 18 cars actually on track, so just 4 sitting in the pits currently, and all cars are either on track or in the pits. Nobody has stopped out on track as yet, despite there being 1 or 2 little moments and some excursions. Coulthard up on pace here.
Yes, David gets it right this time. Much neater, much cleaner, marginally slower entering the corner, but able to change direction, get the car pointing out of the corner, picks up the throttle. We've seen an improvement from Coulthard, personal best, first and second. He drops away fractionally, but still goes second quickest.
Yeah, so good lap that from Coulthard. He goes second to Barrichello, Michael Schumacher, Raikkonen, Heidfeld, McNish, Massa, Panis, Ralf Schumacher, Heinz-Harald Frentzen are top 10.
But Rubens Barrichello, once again for Ferrari, fastest first sector time. Out of the lowest part of the circuit, the Dunlop curve, watch for flat out through here. No, just freeze the throttle marginally.
Very fast through that section. You can watch the rev counter on the left, the engine hard at work. And the telltale showing us that we're up over the 18,000 revs mark in a couple of key areas. Bit wide there off the apex, but kept it on the throttle nonetheless.
Yes, and he lost about maybe 0.3 of a second on that sector over what was the best that we've seen so far over the 1 and a bit sessions. Barrichello is coming out to this final, and he's got Alex Young and Jenson Button ahead of him.
Well, we're looking at Barrichello. Let's just see what this lap is compared to his earlier best. Only a quarter of a second slower than his best from earlier on today, as Ross Brawn watches. Now, we mentioned earlier on there have been some aerodynamic revisions to the back of the Ferrari, particularly Schumacher's car. Peter Winter's been finding out a little bit more about that.
Giorgio, you have a wonderful eye for detail, and your drawings have pleased us over many years. Tell us about the new bodywork at Ferrari. What is the difference between this and the older line?
It's easy because the two drivers are running the 2 engine covers. So Schumi is on the new one, and you can see because it's narrower and also a little bit lower. At the end, it's copy exactly the shape of the engine. You can see even the angle of the heads of the engine because the bodywork is so narrow that it's going on top of the engine. The Barrichello one is the standard engine cover, is a little bit wider and also a little bit taller. It's just a question of very few centimeters, but of course it improves the airflow to the rear wing, so it's very important.
What is the best angle to view this difference from?
I think that if you stay in, let's say, beside the rear tire, and you make a shot of the 2 engine cover, you can see. But now, as far as I could see, Schumi, he went back to the old one again. I have to check because I didn't go on the pit lane at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much, Giorgio. We'll go and do that right now too. Thank you.
See you.
So Giorgio Piola there, the man responsible for so many of the detailed technical drawings that you see in magazines, and in fact on our channel. We'll sometimes produce illustrations that Giorgio's done for us. Has a stunning eye for detail, John.
Yes, indeed, and it's one of those things that you spend a lot of time observing. Teams don't necessarily like it because things like that, they don't want people to pick up and then do very, very accurate, almost engineer's drawings, and then this gets published in the various publications around the world, on top of which there are plenty of photographs being taken. We saw that immediately, of course, when the car went out on track. You could see how pinched it was. Even watching it on a TV screen, we could see that. But what's happening now, we haven't had a good close look at the rear of the Ferrari, and it's this ongoing process. You know, you might find maybe 4 or 10, 6 kilograms of additional downforce. It probably could cost maybe £100,000 or even more to do the development work, but that's where Formula One is at. You need that development program on the road.
The thing, of course, as well, is they're creating this rear bodywork that, as he says, really fits so tightly over the engine. Nowadays, of course, much less problems with the amount of heat created affecting the bodywork that used to be a problem many years ago. Just taking a look here at the onboard with Jacques Villeneuve, and didn't seem who wasn't terribly happy, so making his feelings felt.
It's always a problem, that chicane, if somebody's coming in slowly, the entrance to the pit lanes immediately following the chicane. And a driver, if he sees somebody in his mirror, should actually slow down, let that driver on a fast lap go through. But there's that great shot looking rearward. You can see the steering rack. Not very much movement. Yeah, I was going to say the front of the suspension, not really an awful lot of movement there compared to what we've seen from other cars in other races. You must say, now we don't know the mechanical advantage, but it looks fairly stiff up front on the arrows.
Going through the chicane, that's where we'll see most work there. He was not actually on a particularly quick lap. That's probably where you'll see more movement.
Well, I think you would see a hell of a lot of movement when that gets over the chicanes, because it is extremely aggressive, and the cars take a right pounding every time they go across the chicane, which is what you need to do when you're out on a qualifying lap.
So down into this first corner, and there we are, another look at this little tight section, a couple of left-handers, as we turn our attention now to Takuma Sato. Now his car has obviously, his car's electronics have obviously been reset after the problems he encountered in that first session where the thing just died on him, and they've got it all up and running okay, which is good news. So Sato can now get some decent laps in as we ride on board with Olivier Panis.
And Panis about to make an improvement in time. Whether he makes a position or not, he's currently in 8th place, personal best. He's overcome that little problem in the chicane where traffic was not being helpful, and Olivier Panis has gone 5th.
5th fastest for the Frenchman then, who finally got a finish under his belt for the first time in Canada 2 weeks ago. As we're watching Takuma Sato, the speed trap figures, and Montoya, my goodness, where did that come from? A 311. I wonder if he forgot to brake for the chicane for that one. 311, a massive advantage for Montoya, who's now gone to the top of the speed trap figures.
Interesting watching Sato coming out of that final Coca-Cola curve, like Giancarlo Fisichella in the first session. The back end of the Jordan really drifts out quite a lot. Sato had to put a lot of opposite lock on to correct it, did so, and continues along his way. Sato right now down in 16th place, but of course he had very little running, and he did, I think, about 12 laps. He's only completed 15 to date, and really having to play catch-up to his teammate Fisichella, who's right now done 19th laps and is 12th quickest.
David Coulthard waits to come back out again. He's never finished higher than 3rd place here at the Nürburgring, which is slightly odd. You might have expected him to have done better, but he has scored 2 pole positions, so he's certainly not been short of pace around here. It's just never quite worked out for him in the race itself. And of course, you go back to 1995 when he took pole for Williams. It was one of his embarrassing days, because he spun on the reconnaissance lap and actually had to go out in the spare car instead. But Coulthard since then, of course, has gone on to much bigger and better things, but still looking for a win here at the Nürburgring.
Yeah, Ben, if you look at the back of the Ferrari there, you can see the engine cover. It isn't as pinched as the one that he started the session with, or the first session with, so he's back to the original design. And Ross Brawn, we just momentarily saw on the pit wall. There's a good view of under the rear wing. There's probably also, it's not just maybe the pinching around the rear of that cover, there's probably, it's difficult to tell in that shot, but the inlet's a slightly different shape. The profile of the inlet is also very important in terms of how you draw air into the engine. Possibly the new ones maybe slightly more rounded, but really it's only by putting them side by side. Saying to Ross Brawn, get those 2 engine covers out there, Ross, let's have a look at them, we want to show it to our viewers. I think you've got 2 chances, and Michael gets it all wrong. Massively so too in that final chicane. Jarno Trulli right now fastest through that first sector, and Michael Schumacher decides time to come in. Here's the man who is so far fastest around the lap, a personal best now through that second intermediate, but Trulli in 15th place is going to go upwards.
Let's watch him through the chicane. Over the one, over the second curve, that was neat and tidy, and he will complete the lap. This will move him well up the order now. Let's just see, good and tidy on the apex there, across the camera on the exit of the final corner, and this brings Trulli fastest, so Trulli goes first ahead of the Ferraris.
But Ben, I think that was on fresh rubber. You look at the grooves in those tyres, they're still very, very shiny, and I would suggest that might be a brand new set of tyres.
Yes, and you could just see there where a car came out of the pits in front of him. That gives you a little idea how that might be tricky. Even in qualifying as well, that might cause some problems. We'll have to wait and see. This was when Michael Schumacher overdid it into the Vidal chicane. Got it a bit sideways, but protected the underbody of the car by doing that. He could have straight lined it, but almost decided not to, and just forgot about putting in a quick time, protected that valuable part of the car underneath.
I think you're probably right. I think that Michael Schumacher is so much on top of what he's doing that he's got time to think about, even by going across that strip, that rumble strip which is lining the chicane. By doing that, he may well have damaged the bottom of the car. He said, let's just ignore it, not important. I'll just make a big swerve and go into the pit lane.
Well, he's so on top of his game, isn't he? He just gets better and better. We're watching fellow German Nick Heidfeld. He's not had a particularly successful run here at the Nürburgring in the 2 Grand Prix that he's done, but he's always been fast here. He's twice been a pole sitter in Formula 3000 at this track, and of course was involved in a battle with Montoya for the 3000 championship back in 1998, and unfortunately for him, his pole time was disallowed for a fuel infringement, which meant he had to start at the back, effectively handing the title that day to Juan Pablo Montoya without much of a fight.
Well, he goes through this as a personal best, and he's going to see an improvement in position, but also behind him, Jenson Button in his Renault has also done a personal best in first sector, marginally slower than Heidfeld, but 2 drivers, 2 young guys who will be the future of Formula 1 in their respective teams, beginning this process of building up and looking to find further improvement.
Past the hotel on the left-hand side as he comes out of that last corner, and the grandstands that line this start-finish straight. Nick Heidfeld, 5th fastest with that, but Kimi Raikkonen also on a good lap, and let's watch Jenson Button, because this is going to move him up from 17th place.
Yes, Button probably will end up somewhere between 6th, 5th and 10th, because that's roughly what we'd expect. In fact, he goes 3rd. Well, he picked up a stack of time in that last sector. In the meantime, Raikkonen, here we go, Raikkonen fastest of all so far today in that first sector, shortly on the exit out of the pit curve done. That's where the second split time is, and 1.1 seconds up, so we're going to see somewhere in the middle a 1:32.2304.
This is an impressive lap indeed from Kimi Raikkonen, and surely this must be on new tyres as they go through the different compounds of tyres that they have to use, and the Michelin runners now with their new tyres showing a much greater turn of speed, as we tend to see in this second free practice session. Fastest for Kimi Raikkonen then in the McLaren Mercedes, with over 40 minutes to go still in this second session of free practice.
So now we're beginning to get a glimpse of what to expect. Rubbers going down, the drivers have felt now the racetrack, particularly this section we're watching Raikkonen through these sequence of, it's almost like 4 left-hand corners, but in fact it's probably at the end of the day it's more like 2 and a bit. And Ralf Schumacher, Ralf locks it up again, runs very, very late and wide, and that's going to be a frequent sight, I think, come Sunday afternoon.
Well, there is Ralf. He kept it all together once again and continues on his way around. 13th fastest currently, and Kimi Raikkonen now has set the target to beat, although I don't think Williams will be too bothered about making sure that they top the timesheets on a Friday. It's qualifying in the race that they're concerned about. Of course, Montoya on a run of pole positions from the last 2 Grand Prix, from Monaco and from Montreal. Ralf Schumacher still has only the 1 pole position to his name in his Formula 1 career. That was at Manicourt last year. But, well, we'll just have to see what he can do here this weekend. Now, we're looking at Ralf as we head down into that first corner. This is the camera mounted in his wing mirror. And you can see the car just bouncing over the curbs a little bit. But it's a fairly slow speed section, taken mainly in second, then building up the speed before the 2 tight exit corners.
Interesting, he did pull a gear at this point, so he went from, I think, second briefly to the third, then back down to second, but it's this exit, this right-hand corner back onto the original circuit that really is quite slow, and it's one of those corners you feel that you want to push harder, but of course you have to wait until the track comes to you to get the grip. But David Coulthard, personal best of 31.458 in that first sector. Not as quick as we've seen, but Coulthard may not. You can see that right front tyre, how heavily worn it is. In fact, he chews it up even further as he goes off track onto the gravel. David, unlike his teammate, not yet on a fresh set of rubber, paying the penalty from just being marginally late on the brakes.
Yes, that, as you say, that set of tyres certainly looks pretty worn now, so I can't imagine he's going to be doing many more laps on that set before we see him on a new set of tyres, and that will give him perhaps a little bit more of an idea. Still, it was a good first sector considering it was a used set of tyres, because it was a personal best up to that point.
And look, you can see on that right front how little tread is left. You can see how scuffed and rough it. I mean, it really looks like it's just chewed up. So Again, this is the consequence of a green track. You get abnormally high tyre wear, particularly with the softer compounds. So that tyre's probably done 20-21 laps or so. Coulthard has done, well, 21 laps indeed, as he's on his 22nd lap. And McLaren will probably bring him in. We've got some 37 and, well, just under 37 and three-quarter minutes as we look at the team on the pit lane.
Now, we've seen the Renault team going extremely well. Trulli was fastest for a moment. He's now second fastest, and I think we can speak to team boss Flavio Briatore. Flavio, you must be very happy with Jarno's performance just now.
Yeah, we have the new tyre. Look like the balance of the car is not so bad. Now we try with the option as well, because look like the option is quicker with us. And not so bad, you know. The circuit is quite better for us and not Canada. They look not so bad.
Now you're running we gather from looking at the press releases, etc., you're running a revised traction control system. You seem to have had the advantage with your traction control already this season, so you're obviously still improving things.
Yes, but it's not big difference anyway in lap time. It's a little bit smoother. I believe the big difference is in the wet situation, but in the dry situation look like is any time.
Now Flavio, of course, as well as being boss of Renault team, there's a lot of drivers that you're looking after and watching their careers and moving around. We gather that Mark Webber is going to be testing for Jaguar. Is there a lot going on in the driver market at the moment? A lot of possible changes?
I think so. Jaguar want to change one driver. I don't know the rest, but sure this year maybe 6 or 7 drivers change. And Mark has done very good job in the beginning of the season, just now for the potential. You have a lot of potential.
And which driver do you think that Jaguar will replace for next year?
I don't know yet.
All right, well, thank you very much for joining us, Flavio, from the pit wall, and best of luck for the team this weekend.
Well, I'm afraid that was a bit of a trick question, and thanks, Ben, for asking it, because I didn't know what to do.
Okay, I will have a look.
As we go back into the Sauber team, but clearly Flavio with Minardi, association through Mark Webber, Alonso, who is a contracted Renault driver, as well as being looked after by Flavio. So almost spoiled with riches. But placing these drivers and getting the right time, the right move at the right time is so important to a driver's career that when you make a wrong move, it takes very long to recover from it. And frankly, sometimes a driver doesn't ever get that recovery.
Well, we're watching Juan Pablo Montoya now, and as he tries to get on terms with the pace that's been set by the McLaren Mercedes of Kimi Raikkonen, currently down in 17th place, the man who's been on pole position for the last 2 Grand Prix. Of course, beaten off the start in Monaco by David Coulthard. He led the start in Canada, but was then passed by Rubens Barrichello at the end of the first lap. Montoya finished second here last year, driving for Williams BMW.
And that time was an improvement in terms of lap time. It's the best time we've seen from Montoya, 1:35.073, and that's somewhat 2.75 recurring seconds behind that of Kimi Raikkonen, and Montoya probably with a load of fuel on board and also probably still running on a fairly well-used set of tyres.
Well, Bernoldi's coming out on a new set of tyres as we see jumping around. Takuma Sato up at that chicane once again. We'll see lots of pictures like that this weekend, I think.
Yeah, I mean that's an example of youth, exuberance and inexperience. Just very hard into the chicane, bounces the car across one part and over the other part, and the amount of damage that you do to the underbody of a car doing that is quite considerable, and it does have an effect on the car's performance, the overall lap time potential.
Frentzen drops down in the arrows where Bernoldi's just come out of the pit, so it'll take him a moment or two to make his way around and then go on to his first flying lap on that new set of tyres. Still seeing Irvine and De La Rosa down at the back of the time sheets at the moment, I'm afraid. De La Rosa is 18th fastest and Irvine is 20th fastest, so still only a fraction ahead really of Mark Webber in the Minardi. So that's a little disappointing, but only to be expected with the current Jaguar performance. In the Jordan pit, we've got Fisichella, and Fisichella 9th fastest. There's Gary Anderson, technical director, once again these days at Jordan, having moved away from Jordan. He was at Jaguar, of course, himself for a while, now back with Jordan.
We'll go back up the 4 clicks on that front flap for this first new tyre run, okay?
There's the Jaguar team. continue to try and eke a
If I can have tyre set 1620, and look at that.
little more performance out of the car.
Well, Eddie, you know, it's a difficult period for him in his career. Still capable of being very, very impressive in a Grand Prix car, but this year Jaguar, huge disappointment.
Okay,
The new car not delivering.
Let's have a quick look at the data. We'll go set 4 while we've got the engine cover off. Get ready to fit a rear bar. Just speak to one about it.
Let's take a look at a replay on board with Alan McNish. What was he up to? Did he get a bit out of shape? Oh, he got it all a bit crossed up, bit sideways, but managed to gather it. That was on the exit of that new Mercedes Arena section, as the new bit's called. And we're now looking at his teammate, Mika Salo.
Mika Salo looks very, very good. A little bit of oversteer just in the exit, but nothing that was a problem, just corrects it. And comes all the way down now to the slowest point in to the Dunlop corner you can break into, and oh, there's Sato again off track, and this is on the new section. So this is the first driver we've seen on that new high modular grip tarmac, and he just drives straight back on track, and Felipe Massa had to get off the throttle, his back end stepped out, and you know, if drivers are going to do that, then they have to be aware of cars on track, and I think that Felipe will not be very impressed, and also race director not also to be terribly impressed either. And it's again another little area. We've not seen cars on this revision to the Nürburgring, and each time something happens, there it is, he goes wide. No problem in doing that, but just watch when he just joins back on track. You've got Felipe Massa coming. Well, Massa was off as well, so it's even Stevens.
Yeah, looks like Massa overdid it himself, doesn't it? Let's take another look at this. This was the replay. Yeah, he just went over the curb as well, but too much throttle perhaps. Ran wide and then almost beached it on the curb, so he decided in a way to just get it onto that extra runoff area and pick his way back onto the track. So the two youngsters having fun and games out there, Sato and Felipe Massa. Hopefully they'll save, just do that in the free practice sessions and behave themselves when it comes to qualifying and the race. For Toyota, of course, John, we're back to a track where they actually had an opportunity to test last year.
And Nick Heidfeld now doing that. Is there something at that part of track?
Yeah, it
is
makes
there
you
oil
wonder.
down? That's 3 cars successfully, 2 Cybers and a Jordan, that have gone off into that long left-hand loop that comprises now turn 2. And Heidfeld's got a problem. He's certainly slowed right down. He's picking up speed again, so whatever it was, maybe just being careful and maybe watching to see if other cars were coming close behind. Didn't want to affect anybody else's flying lap.
Almost a complete replica, wasn't it, of the incident for Felipe Massa. We're looking at Mika Salo locking up into that first corner, again trying to ease off the brake, but he just couldn't do it, and in fact he went straight on. We haven't seen anyone do that yet.
No, but he executed a very neat donut. I mean, that's something that even Nigel Mansell would be pretty proud of. There we see the replay of Nick Heidfeld, and all of a sudden coming into turn 1 and then out of that into turn 2, drivers maybe just trying to push that a little bit harder and finding that the limits of grip are actually very close to the limit of grip.
So just looking down over that section once again, getting a bird's eye view of it, and you can see how it drops down through that first apex and then down and up again through the left-handers. There's the next sequence, the tight left followed by the tight right, that leads them back onto the older part of this revised Nürburgring circuit.
Michael Schumacher has gone back out on track and well, running slower than the best. We've seen Kimi Räikkönen at a 30.9 in that first sector, Michael at 31.1. So Michael Schumacher makes his way up through that very, I mean, that is wickedly quick up through there.
Great section of the track. It is very much the fastest section. Highest cornering speeds are seen there. But this also a demanding section. To be quick out of this one, vital for good straight line speed up towards the chicane and a possible overtaking opportunity up there. There's brother Ralph keeping an eye on things. Montoya still with the highest speed trap figure, and Michael's a little bit down on his best on this one.
But this is going to see an improvement in position. He's currently in 6th place, and I would have thought, judging by those sector times, he's probably going to jump up to about 5th, 4th, maybe 3rd. We've seen, well, in fact, he's gone 2nd because he's fastest of everybody in that final sector.
So another improvement for Michael Schumacher. It's Kimi Räikkönen fastest for McLaren at the moment, but now Michael Schumacher and Barrichello 2nd and 3rd, ahead of Trulli, Button, Coulthard, Heidfeld, Frentzen, and then Felipe Massa 9th fastest and Giancarlo Fisichella 10th. De La Rosa's improved up to 11th place, and Bernoldi, who is now on a lap that's improving, just as we're looking at Heidfeld. Bernoldi's on a quickish lap as well.
Then also just looking as Heidfeld came through that very fast S's, just offline you could see a huge amount of rubber build up already, and that's one of the problems of these super sticky tyres on a track that's green. It just shears the rubber off the top of the tyres. It lies on the side of the track, so if anybody is going to get offline, they will be in trouble.
Well, let's watch him up through this last chicane. That was neat and tidy through there, committed but clean, and didn't lose time through it. So Heidfeld looking to try and improve on 7th. He should go that little bit ahead of that as we come down to the line here. Where's this going to put him? Heidfeld crosses the line, and it in fact keeps him in 7th place, just losing a bit of time on the last sector.
But interestingly, out of that Coca-Cola curve, you could see the confidence Heidfeld has in the back of the Sauber. He really pulled on the steering wheel. He leaned on the left rear tyre as we go back to Michael Schumacher. But it's David Coulthard. That's who we want to see. Coulthard fastest right now in Sector 1. Michael Schumacher currently second quickest. Comes out of that final curve, comes across start-finish line. 32.3 is his best, but drops away on that final sector.
Michael Schumacher just putting in laps here, obviously working towards race setup for Sunday as the Ferrari team keep a close eye on his progress. It's Coulthard who has certainly got that fast pace through the first section.
Well, Coulthard, I think we're looking at it, yes, he's got fresh rubber on, because that right front before you could barely see the grooves in the tyre, and well, it looks like the left one certainly got that shiny look in the grooves, indicating a fresh set of rubber.
296.7 kilometers per hour. That's a little bit down on the speed trap figures, so that's a little disappointing. Looks like he's not going to beat his teammates' time, but he should go second fastest if he continues this lap as he is. Across the line, it's third fastest, in fact, just a fraction off Michael Schumacher's pace.
Well, there you can see there have been a set of tyres, fresh set of tyres fitted to Coulthard as Norbert Haug, Motorsport Director Mercedes-Benz, just studies all the information, timing screens, the same screens that effectively you have at home. Of course, the most important one for the teams is that information channel on page 5. Alex Vogt sits there looking, talking. He is the third driver. He's not called a test driver. McLaren have given up employing test drivers. They employ race drivers simply because if one of their drivers is unable to compete, then that race driver can take the place, and he's fully up to speed with where the teams are going.
Well, Jaguar waiting there at the moment, but it's Irvine's on a fairly quick lap. He's on new tyres, but I don't know how much it's going to improve his position. He's 20th at the moment, and so we'll see where he ends up with that. Nick Heidfeld being pushed back into the Sauber pit, and we're looking now at Jenson Button as he's gone through the first sector, 1.5 seconds down on the pace being set by Raikkonen, so I'm sure he's on a used set of tyres at this point. Down the hill towards the Dunlop hairpin, and you can see the camera tracking him through this long corner, and then back up the hill once again.
And Ben, just going back to Eddie Irvine, he has improved. That new set of tyres has really given Irvine a lot more speed, and he's now 19th.
A huge amount of speed, yes. 1 position gain for Eddie Irvine on his new set of tyres. Well, that's pretty demoralising, one has to say. Keeps him behind Bernoldi. Villeneuve's still a long way down in 17th.
Take this lap, Jen. Take this lap, and the pit stop there is ready for you. Pit stop there is ready for you.
So Jenson Button will be coming in at the end of this lap as work continues there in the Williams pit.
And they were talking about a rear roll bar change. I assume that is Montoya's car, because there is the other car of Ralf Schumacher. So a little mechanical alteration for Juan Pablo Montoya as Ralf Schumacher just continues around, running in 15th, personal fastest first sector, but of course he's about 16 slower than the best we've seen to date in that first sector.
Just hear the traction control working a little bit, even through the fast corners like that. And now the engine on full song, revving up to over 18,000 revs per minute on its way up towards the chicane. Now let's watch the super slow-mo. Great opportunity to see the tyres working and the bouncing, the suspension working over the curbs. Look at the way that tyre oscillates as well.
Yeah, I mean, Ralph couldn't have gone in there any quicker. He had to use a maximum amount of curb on the entry, and then the speed carried the car across picked up a lot of curve on the exit, but not so much that he would have lost time. Nevertheless, Ralf Schumacher has improved substantially. He's gone 5th quickest.
Yes, 5th fastest now for the German. So he'll be pleased with that, to see the progress being made. And the car seems to be working well. He seems to be able to place it where he needs. There's Gerhard Berger on the left, Mario Tyson on the right. Then behind the BMW Motorsport program. And after the engine failures in the last 2 Grand Prix for Juan Pablo Montoya, they'll be hoping for solid reliability here at the Nürburgring. Of course, Mercedes have had their trials and tribulations at this track over the years. Remember 1997 when they had the 2 cars up front, and both engines of Coulthard and Hakkinen blew up within 1 lap of one another, and the most visible place on the track on the start-finish straight. And then, of course, the following year, Hakkinen came back to take an assured victory over Michael Schumacher. So they've had the lows and the highs. BMW yet to win the race here.
Watch Fisichella, the way he pitches the Jordan in the back of the car, got more bite than I've seen from the Jordan so far this session. And we saw Fisichella, Sato get the car at the back end quite way out. And Jordan doing such a good job in the last 3 Grand Prix, recovering from a very difficult start with reliability and lack of performance, and that's beginning to come back. And now 6th in the Manufacturers' Championship, which is probably not where they want to be, but they're within 2 points of Sauber, who are 5th, and 6 points within Renault, who are in 4th place.
Now, as we're working our way through this second session of free practice, it certainly looks like it's the cars that are using the Michelin tyres, the Renaults, the McLarens, the Williams beginning to feature now, more so perhaps than those midfield Goodyear runners like Bridgestone. Bridgestone runners.
I know what you mean.
Midfield Bridgestone runners like Sauber and Jordan and BAR. So it does look as though Michelin are in pretty good shape, but of course we'll have to wait and see how that works out once we get into the qualifying session and the race itself. And the blistering problems that we've seen at some of the previous races, that's Michael Schumacher going fairly slowly. I think he's probably just looking for some space.
Yes, I mean, he's been out, he's on this lap. His first sector time was slow, his second sector time he's backed off, and he's just looking for, you say, track position winning. As we look at Rubens Barrichello now, as he comes through the final Coca-Cola curve. Barrichello has got personal best first and second sectors, not quick enough to put him in pole position or provisionally fastest. And in fact, he gets a personal fastest, stays 4th place, but that last sector again lost just a fraction of seconds of time.
All getting a little closer up at the top end, as you can see.
Fractionally down from where the Michelin target was, but the fronts are bang on. Now, obviously, if we go and make the change we wanted to have a look at for sort of stability, it's going to make it even worse. So whether we make some changes and do another new tyre run.
You can almost hear Eddie thinking there.
Yes, I'm not sure if we're actually getting his microphone working, because it does look as though he's actually chatting away, but we're not actually hearing his response to that as they struggle to drag themselves up a little further up into the top 20. 19th place at the moment for Irvine, although De La Rosa is 13th fastest.
And you can see Kimi Raikkonen there coming through the chicane, just checking his mirrors. Raikkonen beginning another lap, just positioning himself into that final curve to pick up maximum speed off the corner. Second fastest, just about second fastest part of the racetrack, and now in that very critical turn 1, and he's just locked it up and gone way wide. All the preparation as Pedro De La Rosa comes out of the pit lane, looks like he's on a fresh set of tyres. Kimi Raikkonen has now to make his way around the lap. First sector time, of course, will have been not significant, but nevertheless he has to push. It's all information, and the team will want him to push for the rest of this lap.
So riding with Raikkonen, the Finn, who's had so much poor luck so far this season with reliability, but has certainly shown his pace, and now just looking for that opportunity of a decent race. Almost went his way in Canada, but then of course they didn't manage to get enough fuel in the car, and that really hindered his attempt to get on the podium, as that 1/3 place finish from Australia at the start of the season. Now, just watch him here. Very much not flat out through the left-hander. And now heading around towards the longest straight, the Mercedes engine working hard.
Got a nice power delivery.
Yeah, sounds good, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it seems to work all the way through the rev range. it's not sort of peaking suddenly when it gets near to maximum RPM. It's just getting there, and it's sort of, it sounds right. It sounds like an engine should sound.
So Michael Schumacher now then, second fastest at the moment to Kimi Räikkönen. Look at the tyres here on the Williams BMW of Ralf Schumacher.
Those are just trashed, that's Ralph's tyres, but again...
Power drops away when I try to do it. Just no power, no width.
Well, just wonders, was there a problem with the clutch or something? It looked like he couldn't disengage it from gear, and there's an engine problem.
Good in the first lap.
We look at one of the two Minardis, and it's probably Alex Young, we think.
Yeah, it's Alex Young making his way around slowly. Last of all at the moment. As you can see, some 5 seconds off the front running pace, but he's just under a just over a second slower than his teammate Mark Webber currently, but it's obviously some sort of engine problem that has made him pull off the circuit, so it's the end of his free practice session this morning.
And he's pulled off just on the edge of that very high speed there. We see him now behind the barriers off the racetrack, and he can get back to the pits pretty rapidly. There's a marshal on a motorcycle to get him back to the pits. Of course, his afternoon now is finished because no spare car available on Friday or Saturday morning. And well, you can see the beginnings of the Asia Tech's demise. Does a good job, pulls off the line, looks in his mirrors, then just pulls over to the side of the track, and the car then will go behind the barrier.
Yes, just going on to the link piece. They use that part of track for the shorter version of this track. And he's saying, what are you doing, boys? Don't damage the wing on the grass. And, well, perhaps you should get in there and help steer the car, and then they probably wouldn't. So, Alex Young out of the session for now. De La Rosa should be moving up here. He's currently 13th, but he's showing some personal bests at the first 2 sectors.
Let's just watch him through that final turn. Good entry, nice exit. Economy in terms of not letting the car move around slide, and he goes 9th best, and that's, well, Jaguar, okay, this is not qualifying, but they will nonetheless be happy to be inside the top 10 rather than outside of it.
You can really see that dip, can't you, on the apex there, as we're now riding on board the McLaren of David Coulthard. Remember, Kimi Räikkönen, his teammate, still fastest of all in this free practice, but David is up on that split time now.
He's not only up, he is actually fastest. He's 1/10, just over a tenth quicker. So David Coulthard strong in the first sector. We saw him strong in the first sector in the previous run. Then he had a personal best in the second sector, then he drifted away slightly in that final sector. So he needs to see some consolidation in these remaining 2 sectors.
Well, that sounded pretty committed through there. Now watch him through the next left and right.
And one thing David Coulthard does not lack is courage when it comes to driving a Grand Prix car. And through that essence, it is pretty important. Slight improvement again, but most importantly, 2 purples now up on the timing screens. So Coulthard maybe hoping to get somewhere near to a low 132, maybe even a high 131. All depends on this final entry into the Coca-Cola curve. Lean in, get the power down, let the car run out wide, free the car up, and then the time will come.
And he's fastest, so David Coulthard beats his teammate's time by 0.4 of a second. McLaren Mercedes 1-2 currently, ahead of the Ferraris of Michael Schumacher and Barrichello, then the Williams of Ralf Schumacher, and the Renaults of Trulli and Button. Then it's the Sauber of Heidfeld, the Jaguar of De La Rosa, and the BAR Honda of Olivier Panis rounding out the top 10. So Coulthard will be pleased with progress, but I'm sure that's a new set of tyres that's helped him to do that. Ferrari with that earlier edge, now perhaps seeing the Michelin tyre coming into its own with more rubber going down.
I don't think we've seen a Ferrari run yet in this part of the session with anything other than tyres that they used from this morning. They may just wait until the end of the session. We've still got just under now 14 minutes remaining. There's Nick Heidfeld. Well, the local boys here continues his progress. Heidfeld right now in 8th place, and he's just beginning a run and coming up to that first sector.
Yes, down beneath the bridge, and Heidfeld now through the older part of the track once again. Be heavy on the brakes down into the hairpin now. Gear changing, all being looked after automatically nowadays, remember?
And again, not flat, but just having to pull back on the throttle before he goes through. That's very quick. But interesting to listen to the engine, the Ferrari engine characteristic. Okay, it's a Petronas, but it is absolutely magnificent.
Well, it's interesting listening to the gearbox on this Sauber. Not quite as crisp as the new Ferrari, of course. It's a different transmission, certainly to the latest Ferrari. And you just don't get that same crispness on gear change.
Okay, copy that.
But I think also Ferrari, progress never stops, and the electronics that control the gear changes and the whole system is constantly being updated, upgraded. Juan Pablo Montoya just explaining it, he'd gone off track, and whoa, he just about kept that.
Build the pressures up, see if we can sort the problem out that way, Juan. Do a lap, and then we'll increase the pressures on the next set on the rear.
And they're talking about tyre pressures there, to get a little bit more tyre pressure in to try and balance the car out. What he's got is fundamentally too much understeer, though that clearly was oversteer as a consequence of going off the track.
Okay, on the next set.
So a bit of work still to be done there in the Williams pits.
Check the tyres, check the tyres.
Yes, Michael Schumacher, is he on a new set of tyres? We'll have a little look in a second as he's ready to come out. Now, we've seen McLaren Mercedes go to the top of the timesheets. Ron Dennis on the pit wall. Ron, you must be very happy with how things are going. David Coulthard put in a very quick lap just now. Ron, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
Great, yeah, good performance so far from David and Kimi. Are you working through all the Friday, the plan, all going according to plan today so far?
Yes, I have no real problems. We're just running through a tyre comparison program. What's encouraging at the moment is the Bridgestones on the more competitive cars do seem to have similar levels of degradation, which helps in our view of the race, and obviously supports the choice that we're making on tyres.
Is there a fairly clear-cut decision on the choice that you have between your main tyre and the option, or is it going to be quite a difficult one to call this weekend?
No, I think the time difference is enough to make the decision easy, but we've got to look at things like degradation and tyre wear, which then interlink with race strategy. You know, a one or a two-stop strategy here, both of which could work, are push you also in a certain direction on tyres. So it's a little premature to know exactly what we're doing. But in watching the other cars at the moment, it's reasonably encouraging, especially with the performance of the Williams at the moment. It's just gone out on new tyres.
Now that tyre degradation that we see, that normally changes as more rubber goes down over the weekend. The weather conditions are always unpredictable here at Nürburgring. If we had a heavy overnight rain on Saturday night, would that change how the tyres perform on Sunday?
Really depends on the weather between that rain shower and the Sunday event. High ambient temperatures tend to play more to the Michelin than the Bridgestone. It has been very warm. I'm not too sure if we've got a front going through, but end of the day it's the same for everybody, and it at the moment doesn't look too bad.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining us from the pit wall, Ron, and best of luck for the rest of the weekend.
Thank you.
Well, so, in the meantime, while you were talking to Ron Dennis, the Williams team have been keeping an eye on Juan Pablo Montoya.
Stopping in the box, Tony.
Montoya up now to 7th place, but we did hear...
stop in the box, Juan. We'll just go straight in the garage to check the pressure.
Yeah, you hear the team talking about tyre pressures, and they're going to try and use the tyre pressures as another method of sorting out the handling, maybe to reduce some of the understeer that Juan Pablo Montoya is not happy about.
Yes, Montoya currently 7th, and his teammate Ralf Schumacher is 5th at the moment. And we'll wait to see just how it finishes off this session. 8.5 minutes still to go. And Michael Schumacher, look, up on the intermediate time. So the Ferrari on the Bridgestone tyre showing good performance once again here.
Yes, and listening to Ron Dennis, I mean, the whole issue, all the teams, particularly at the front, and Ferrari being the principal Bridgestone team, McLaren and Williams being the principal Michelin teams, they're watching each other like a hawk, and degradation is the performance of the tyre, how the drop off rather than the actual tyre wear. So when you do a lap or a sequence of laps, how much degradation in terms of time occurs, and it's critical to your race strategy. And of course now with this new loop in the circuit, everybody's starting from the same basis and having to try and work out for themselves, but second guess what everybody else is doing, where they will be and where you will be.
So Michael Schumacher with the fastest time through the first sector of anybody, a personal best in the second, but will the tyres hold out for the no? They don't for the latter part of the lap. Now that's to a certain extent what Ron Dennis was talking about, was the fact that perhaps the Bridgestone tyres weren't holding up as well, and that may be a little bit of proof. Very fast on the early part of the lap, but not so fast on the latter part.
Yes, maybe you could see that coming through the chicane. It wasn't quite, I'll listen to watch again, Michael, not maybe just quite as neat and tidy. Having to struggle there, you see quite a lot of understeer in the middle of the chicane, has to pull it back fairly quickly. The car responds, I mean, it's an amazing car how quickly it does respond, but not quite the level of grip as Andreas Lottner, the Jaguar test driver, dreams maybe one day of being a Grand Prix driver and emulating his countryman, though somehow I don't think he comes from Mönchengladbach, though, does he?
No, I don't think so, but he's an ever-present member of the Jaguar pits this year, looking for his opportunity to get a race seat, has been test driving for Jaguar this year. There's Ron Dennis. We were speaking to him, of course, just a few moments ago from that position on the pit wall, and a little bit more free perhaps today. Sometimes he tends to keep it very close to his chest as to what's going on, but certainly giving us the idea that he was fairly happy with the way the tyres are performing this weekend. The Michelin tyres working well on the McLaren, and certainly he's got good cause to be happy with Coulthard fastest and Raikkonen third.
It would be difficult to be otherwise in reality, and I mean, to play down your positions, and in fact Raikkonen and Coulthard were second and first respectively. There's David. You can see again, looking at those sets of tyres, the wear rate in the front looks to be very high. It's pretty substantial tyre, unless they've taken off that set of tyres and put on again another older set that has done maybe some more mileage. We've now just got under 6 minutes session remaining. Coulthard goes back out. We need to keep an eye on what Coulthard does. Currently fastest on a 1:31.886. And if he's a second or more beyond that, then we would be right in our judgment that he's gone out on an older set of tyres.
So Jacques Villeneuve, we're keeping an eye on him now because he's down in 16th position, but he's on an improving lap here, a 31.7 through the first sector. Not really on the pace.
Again, he's got a very front-endy car, bites, then the back end lets go.
Yeah, it looks like he's got a sort of mid-corner, doesn't it, where the back end's sort of getting away a little bit. That puts him 14th.
Well, 14th, but Olivier Panis' teammate, he's 10th quickest. And Panis does not work as hard in the car as Villeneuve does.
Well, maybe he's earning all that money that he gets from BAR. He gets a lot more money than Olivier Panis, that's for sure. And Jacques, as we mentioned, one of the very highest or second highest paid driver in Formula One currently. They're waiting to let Kimi Raikkonen come back out onto the track. David Coulthard has just come back out once again. So they're going to have another run in the closing moments of this free practice session for the European Grand Prix.
And let's once again have a look at those tyres to see if they are fresh, brand new, or just fresh. Well, they're not even fresh, they're fairly used tyres. And very much like Coulthard, I think these are tyres that have done many laps, not just simply a brand new set that's done one set of laps and back in again. As we ride on board with David Coulthard, who's just about to go on to that, coming through the new sector of track. So we're looking for something in the region of middle 30 seconds, well, high 30 seconds, low 31 seconds. Well, it's not bad.
No, that's right. Let's just watch him here. Just a little bit of curb, but not too much. Takes the car in under braking there, quite early.
Yes, and also you can hear the car is constantly changing down gear, almost at the point where he's beginning to turn to exit the corner.
Yeah, very quick through that section as well. So Coulthard on a pretty good lap here at the moment. But presumably on tyres that have already done a lap or so. So yes, that would indicate 1.2 seconds down on his previous best.
And there's an indication just how fast a Formula 1 car slows down when you give those carbon fibre brakes a good talking to. But 1.2 seconds down. Yes, these tyres have done quite a number of laps. McLaren saving tyres for the future, and they will want to do maybe a little bit more tyre testing tomorrow morning prior to going into qualifying.
Barrichello, a good speed there. He got a bit of a toe, and you see, look, 306.2 kilometres per hour are his best so far today. As he comes out of the final corner and across the line. Barrichello currently 4th fastest, and he stays in 4th, 33.256 compared to a 32.9 that he did a little earlier on.
Well, some cars just coming out. Benson's out, Fisichello's just come out. This is a replay. Mika Salo over there, the hand coming out to Enrique Bernoldi, and this is coming into the chicane, and Salo is saying, you know, use your mirrors.
Use your mirrors, use your head, perhaps. It looked like that's what he was saying. As really, I think we've got just about every car on track in the closing moments. In fact, Ralf Schumacher, I think, may be the only one in the pit lane at the moment. So the last few moments being counted down. Looks good for McLaren Mercedes on day one at the Nürburgring for the European Grand Prix, and it does look fairly promising, it has to be said, for the Michelin runners, with just Michael Schumacher and Barrichello in the top 9 on the Bridgestone tyres. Next up then it's Olivier Panis who's fastest on the Bridgestones, and in fact the Saubers have dropped away a little bit because Heidfeld now in 11th place and Felipe Massa down in 16th position.
Fisichella has gone out, he's just beginning a lap now. He is another of the Bridgestone runners. That might give us a clue as to whether Bridgestone are going to be the tyre of the weekend or whether it's going to favour Michelin. As Juan Pablo Montoya comes up final corner, seeks to see an improvement. Montoya currently in 7th, got personal best both sectors, goes to 5th.
Yep, so an improvement there for Montoya, a 33.122, so just a fraction slower than Rubens Barrichello, and puts him just ahead of his teammate Ralf Schumacher.
Ooh, that hurts. Ooh, that really hurts. You can feel the bottom of the car there.
Yeah, and he's just
going to work it out. And Fisichella's got it all wrong. He was looking to see an improvement.
The amount of gravel in the car.
Oh, I mean, well, fortunately, we're just about at the end of the session. But look, I mean, that's naughty. Giancarlo Fisichella going off on the exit of the Dunlop curve, then climbing up through one of the most tricky parts of the circuit. Watch when he brakes, sees it shoot out the front. Coulthard's now going over that gravel, having probably just about the next car up after Fisichella.
Checker flag is out then, so free practice comes to an end. And Coulthard looks like he will finish this lap, or will he come in? As the session is concluded, it is Coulthard who ends up with the fastest time of the day in the McLaren Mercedes. The two McLaren Mercedes split by the Ferrari of local boy Michael Schumacher, out to make it 3 wins in a row at the Nürburgring this year. And Coulthard taking the checker flag as he comes out of that final corner for the last time. Coulthard fastest therefore. He's done some 35 laps here today, but the most laps looks to have been completed by Olivier Panis. Once again, he's been clocking up the laps. He's done 54 laps this morning.
So, session's finished. Coulthard still continues rounds. All information for the team. Hans-Hauer Frentzen also, he made some improvements, and he's actually still on a flying lap, personal best in that first sector. Frentzen currently in 13th place, pretty much one of the last cars on the lap. In fact, he is the last car that will take the flag. Frentzen now onto the fastest part of the circuit. In fact, I'm just looking to see, has he backed off or not? Is he maybe deciding? Yeah, he has. He's backed off.
The brakes are very hot. Checkered flag's already out.
Yeah, so he was perhaps going to back off and see if he could get another lap, but he's heard that the checkered's out already, so there's no point. He makes it back into the pit lane. So the session concludes with Coulthard as fastest, and he's certainly into a good patch at the moment. The question is, can he maintain that through qualifying the race? Friday really doesn't count, which is good for the morale. And McLaren Mercedes seem to be fairly happy with both cars up there in the top 3, but Michael Schumacher second fastest, Rubens Barrichello fourth fastest. The two Williams here, we're looking at Ralf Schumacher making his way round, ending up 5th and 6th here today. Mika Salo just relaying a little more information after their day has seen him go 9th fastest, so that's a good effort. 18th fastest for Alan McNish.
So, you think the work's over? Well, you're wrong, because everybody will go back in now to their motorhomes and sit down, get the data, analyse it, discuss it. As Toyota have said to us, Gustav Brunner, this all can go straight back to their headquarters in Cologne in real time. And very often, it's back at base that some of the solutions for the problems teams have are actually created.
Well, look at that. That was Raikkonen over the curbs at the chicane. That was really making the car work out there, wasn't he? Let's take a look at it from on board. Let's see how much his head moves around as he hops over those curbs. 1, 2. That was hitting it pretty hard there.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom of the car will be, that'll not be the same bottom will start tomorrow morning. So it's very, very aggressive using that curb as he's doing.
So once again, it's the Michelins that appear in the second session of free practice to have the edge after the first session saw Bridgestone users near the top. This time, Michael Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello are their best representatives, and then you have to look all the way down to 10th place for the next Bridgestone user, and that is Olivier Panis. Well, he'll be encouraged to be inside the top 10 using the revised Honda engine in the back of the BAR, of course, but behind the Toyota of Salo, so Honda won't like being behind a Toyota. Heidfeld next up, ahead of Sato. Good effort from Sato today. Frentzen, De La Rosa 14th, ahead of Villeneuve, Massa and Fisichella. Long way down, really, in the end, so perhaps not running the car light at all. McNish 18th, Bernaldi 19th, Mark Webber in 20th place, and that means that he ended up faster than Eddie Irvine, 21st position, ahead of Alex Young, who of course pulled off towards the end of the session with what looked like an engine failure. So it's been an interesting first day at the Nürburgring. Everybody getting used to that new track layout at the first corner, finding it all a little bit tight and twisty, bit Mickey Mouse perhaps, but it will cause incident, I'm sure, come the race itself, both at the start and during the race when we see people coming out of the pit lane. That could provide plenty of drama, and we'll just have to see how things settle down. There we are looking at that new section of track, and the Mercedes grandstand in the background there, having a great view of a very tight and twiddly section that could cause problems on race day.
Yes, and anybody in that particular viewing area is going to have a pretty exciting Grand Prix, because you can guarantee there will be a lot of action down in turn 1, both at the start of the race and certainly throughout the race, and also when pit stops come into play. And we still don't know whether teams are going to opt to go with a one stop, which is, it's pretty evenly split between 1 and 2 stops. So with this revision to the circuit, with the tyre wear, the tyre degradation, it may be that running a one stopper is not the right way to go.
Let's take a look back over the highlights then of this morning's second session of free practice. But before we do that, Matt is going to speak to Mika Salo.
Yes, the good weekend for Toyota, off to a good start for both McNish in the first session and Mika Salo in both first and second session. Mika 9th both times. Consistency doesn't seem to be a problem for the Toyota team.
No, everything is fine. Car was working well all day. We had no mechanical problems at all. We still have some work to do. It's not comfortable as it should be, and we still have a little bit understeer problem.
It's a new team, but not a new circuit for Toyota. You know this one pretty well.
Well, yeah, except the first part, which they changed for this year now. I think that's new for everybody. I've done here all the races here, and it's definitely not one of my favorite circuits. But the new part made it better.
I was going to ask about the new part. How has that improved things?
Because the long left-hander, the second and third corner, it's loading the front quite a long time, and it's very difficult to set up the car for it.
Oh, well, you're doing well thus far. Good luck for the rest of the weekend. Thanks for joining us, Mika.
Thanks a lot.
OK, let's have a look back at the highlights of the latest session ahead of the European Grand Prix.